If you're wanting to dip your toes into Mythic Plus, or if you're looking to run some keys without sweating bullets, we're here to help. We put together a list of the best specs for beginners in Season 3, following 3 very important rules. Number 1, every spec needs to have a low skill floor, which will be different for every role, but will mean having a fairly easy rotation. Then rule number 2, every spec needs to be strong. No wet noodles here, we're looking for the biggest pumpers. And our final rule, each spec should be relatively forgiving to play. Even if you make mistakes, they shouldn't instantly brick your key. And if there's one thing that should never gatekeep you from enjoying Mythic Plus, it's your UI. It feels like a complete headache needing to set up every add-on and making sure you have all those damn weak auras needed to push rating. That's why we developed a one-click solution, giving you a rank 1 ready UI with the click of a button, configuring everything you would ever need to push IO. This is just one amazing perk we offer at skillcap.com on top of our expanding library of dungeon guides and class courses. We've rolled out brand new updates for Season 3, which help you get started on any spec, including min-maxing tips directly from the best players in the game. All this and more is why we guarantee that you can gain up to 500 IO score just by using our guides. So be sure to visit the links below to learn more and get started with an exclusive discount offer. For now, back to the video. First up, let's take a look at some of the best DPS for beginners in Season 3, starting with ranged. You probably saw this coming, but in case you didn't, we will be including BM Hunter first on our list, a spec which checks all 3 boxes, having a low skill floor while being an absolute meta powerhouse and fairly forgiving. While BM does require a bit of maintenance with barbed shot, the overwhelming majority of BM damage comes from Black Arrow. Hunters also have the unique advantage of being able to deal their entire rotation on the move, making it much easier to play mechanics, all while having fewer responsibilities compared to other classes on this list. And even though they're not the most meta spec right now, we're also going to mention Balanced Druid. Boomies have a fairly simple rotation that doesn't change much once you're actually inside your cooldown window. And even though Balanced Druid does have a fair amount of responsibilities when it comes to stops, keep in mind that all of their CC is AoE, which makes it relatively forgiving and impactful to use. The only potential caveat with including Boomies on this list is the fact that their DPS rotation does require a bit of ramping. Even though they can do insane damage on massive AoE pulls, mobs might die too fast in lower keys for that impact to be felt. Speaking of doing massive AoE damage, we think Destro Warlock is also a great choice for beginners. Just like Boomy, this is a spec with a fairly easy rotation that only needs to follow a few simple rules. Not to mention the payoff is incredible. The amount of damage Destro Warlocks can do on AoE pulls is unmatched. Of course, Warlocks are also fairly forgiving defensively, having higher base stamina and good passive damage reduction. While they can suffer against rot damage, Warlocks are able to survive big hits no problem. Then when it comes to selecting beginner-friendly melee, there are less obvious standouts, but Ret Paladin is definitely one of them. The appeal of playing Paladin as a beginner hasn't changed in the past few expansions. Ret is, and probably forever will be, the DPS that best embodies the intuitive priority system of dealing damage centered around only a few damage buttons. Ret also continues to have numerous defensive advantages over other specs, being incredibly bulky and having a wide range of cooldowns to flowchart through every situation. At a high level, the spec does take on a lot of responsibilities thanks to having a bunch of utility, but for the average player doing low to mid-range keys, damage alone will carry. And speaking of carrying with damage, we have to include Frost Death Knight on our list. There's been a meme over the years that Frost DK is a 2-button spec, and while this is obviously hyperbole, it is somewhat accurate as the vast majority of their damage comes from a couple of spells, changing slightly based on target counts. With that said, it's still very important to capitalize on your cooldown window as a Frost DK, and you can't afford to make rotational mistakes during this time. Luckily, DKs are relatively forgiving on the defensive end, having higher base stamina and even some built-in damage reduction at low HP, while also having an extensive budget of damage reduction cooldowns to survive big damage. Beyond these 2 melee, it's really hard to pick a good third for easy melee, but Arms Warrior definitely comes to mind. While far from being meta in the highest keys and as a spec which exclusively excels with higher pull sizes, Arms Warrior is a bit niche, but it's still very approachable for most players. Having a simple rotation that scales very well with pull size and having good passive tankiness against physical damage makes Arms a great choice for anyone getting started in Mythic Plus. Now, at this point, we've only covered DPS, and that's for a good reason. Between the 3 roles, DPS are probably the most beginner-friendly, with tanks definitely being the least. Now, we don't want to get into a discussion about which role is easier, melee or ranged, because there are definitely valid arguments on both sides, and we're sure the comment section will sort everything out. But no matter what, as a DPS, if you make blunders across an entire run, it's usually not a big deal. After all, dying is never a DPS problem, but a healer problem. Just kidding, of course. But now, with all of our DPS covered, let's take a look at the best healers for beginners. Kicking things off is Restoration Shaman. Now, I know what you're thinking. Shaman? With all that utility and button bloat, what are you thinking? To address the elephant in the room, yes, there is a lot you can do as a Shaman to impact your run. You bring a ton of stops, which passively means having more responsibilities. However, the saving grace season is the simplicity of the Resto Shaman rotation in Season 3. Reactive healing is the name of the game. Despite having Cloudburst Totem, Shamans don't really need to ramp, and with Farseer being the meta spec, you don't need to maintain healing rain at all. Dealing damage is also pretty straightforward too. Once your ancestors are out, just spam Chain Lightning without even worrying about a target count. Finally, as one of the strongest healers this season, you can't really go wrong by picking up Resto Shaman as a beginner. Next up, we have a pick that might seem a bit obscure, Disciplined Priest. Yeah, maybe Disc isn't the most meta healer at the moment, but the spec is fairly autopilot. Thanks to the powers of Atonement and Voidweaver, Disc Priest is able to out-heal most damage with their standard damage rotation, and with just one stop and no kick, you don't have any responsibilities outside of blasting damage. Now, before you get too excited, there are two things that can make Disc challenging. Number one, their spot healing isn't great, and number two, their passive tankiness leaves a lot to be desired. Both of these issues are more apparent in high keys when you need to pre-flash heal and pre-fade big damage. But if you're starting out in low keys, you can get by with blasting damage and occasionally donating the best external in the game to your tank. We also want to make a quick nod to Resto Druid, which is definitely a strong healer in the meta, but might be slightly challenging for some players. While they have some of the best passive healing output in the game, Resto Druid is still a highly proactive healer, which means needing to stick to maintenance while ramping in advance before damage happens. Some players might struggle to adapt to the Resto Druid gameplay loop, but as long as you maximize Life Bloom uptime on your squishiest DPS and your tank, keep Efflorescence down, and Catweave for damage, then you have already nailed most of the fundamentals. Speaking of tanks, let's look at what we think is best suited for beginners in Season 3. Right now, it's definitely Prot Warrior, which strikes a balance of being strong in the meta while also relatively easy to play. Rotationally, Prot is fairly straightforward right now, as Mountain Thane with Thunderclap acting as a multi-purpose button to apply bleeds, keep up slows, and to generate rage, with the only real forms of maintenance being Ignore Pain and Shield Block. Defensively, Warrior is currently the tankiest tank, so to speak, especially against physical damage. And although Warrior mains have mourned the loss of Spell Block, there are a lot of high-value reflects this season. In any case, if you're wanting a positive experience as a beginner in Mythic Plus, you can't go wrong with any of these options. But we have a question. What does every single player at the top of the ladder have in common? The answer? Time. Time to perfectly tweak and set up their UI and add-ons. Time to practice their damage or healing rotation. Time to learn the ins and outs of every pull. And most importantly, time to actually play, get comfortable, and experience keys. Which is why here at SkillCapped, we focus on fast-tracking your learning as much as possible. Be it through perfectly optimizing your UI with just one click with the SkillCapped add-on package, connecting you directly with the world's top players in our exclusive Ask a Pro channel, or condensing hours of knowledge into our custom-designed, easy-to-digest dungeon guides and class guides, which get you instantly ready to climb in Season 3. We provide you not only with more time to play, but all the resources needed to improve, which include a rating gain guarantee. Don't waste your time. Visit skillcapped.com now and claim your exclusive discount using the link below. For now, we want to thank you all for watching. See you soon.